So today I'm wanting to cover a little bit of ground that I think gets neglected. Some of the aspects of Happy Science are kind of culturally focused on Japan. So they're really quite natural for Japanese people, but they're a little foreign to Australians and New Zealanders. So I want to address some of those things, talk about some of those things so that they're a little easier to understand. Because quite frankly, some things really surprise people and they're a little put off by some aspects. But I figure if I explain some of them, then it might be easier going forward as you encounter some of them. You probably by now know a lot of the facts about Happy Science. Master Okawa started the movement in '86 and he's written over 1,000 books, given over 2,000 lectures around the world. And it's a strong, vibrant, religious, spiritual movement. So we know all that, so I'm not going to cover too much of that today. And what I normally talk about a lot is the teachings themselves. Because I guess I'm a spiritual person originally, I focus on the sort of that aspect. But I think there's a lot more. It's quite a well-rounded and broad movement that does cover a lot of ground. So it does, there is a political party in Japan, a happiness realization party, and that alone is quite confronting for people because we tend to think nowadays that it's somehow anti-democratic to have a religious political party, but it's not actually, it's not that we're opposed to democracy and want to set up a theocracy. We're just wanting to express views that other parties just aren't interested in. So it's very active, very vibrant, not necessarily successful yet in the polls, but it's very interesting what they're doing in politics. And I think what they are doing is getting a lot of their policies heard and taken on by the mainstream. And the party that just won with all of our policies, but without crediting us. So they're definitely making a difference. So that's quite interesting. Another is economics and management and business issues. Master Okawa knows a lot about these things, studies very broadly himself, and teaches a lot of management techniques and issues. And he does all of this from a spiritual kind of perspective. So it's from a perspective that wants to nurture other people as they develop in business and management skills. Ethics, international relations. We've talked in the past about the Global Liberty site, which has a lot of current affairs from a spiritual perspective. So that's very interesting, and it really gives us a different perspective on what's happening in different nations and the way different nations relate to each other, and the guiding spirits of different nations interact with each other. So that's a really interesting aspect as well. But I see Happy Science really as the blueprint for the future of the world from a perspective of the highest spirits. So it's really a guide for how we can create a really bright civilization. One more about the teachings is that, one more issue is that they're quite broad and they cover a lot of different aspects. And so the structure and history of the spirit world is covered in the laws of the sun and the golden laws. Other teachings about the unshakable mind and teachings that develop personal development and developing a bright future for yourself. Stages of love and stages of development are really important teachings that are quite new, and linking those two, linking your progress in giving more and more profoundly, giving love, is actually the same path as developing your enlightenment. So linking those two together to make wisdom and love grow together, I think is a really new and interesting teaching from Happy Science, Master Okawa. Harmonising world religions is one of our main goals. So not necessarily becoming the only world religion, anything like that, but rather creating a structure in which different religions can exist in harmony. So we don't need to compete, we need to respect each other, and that's actually possible. You talk to some people nowadays and they think that that's absolutely impossible, like never in the past has there been religious peace. But the religious wars that we know so well, Islam and Christianity, I'm looking at you, are really only in the last 1,000 years. Before that, those two were quite peaceful for several hundred years. And I'm not saying there hasn't been power struggles long into the past, but religions haven't always been in, deadly conflict with each other. Master Okawa has given us hundreds and hundreds of spiritual messages channeled from high spirits and personalities from the past, from the guardian spirits of people living in the present, so politicians and world leaders of the present. And they're fascinating. They really offer an insight. Teachings that encompass economics and politics we've talked about, and also alien readings, which I won't get stuck on, but a lot of research into aliens that are living, we are the aliens, and Master Okawa is exploring the different races and the different interactions in the spirit world and also physically in relation to aliens. So some very interesting teachings there as well. So Happy Science is broad, but because it straddles so many religions, cultures, practices and ideas, it sometimes has aspects that appear strange to particular people in particular places and times. So it really does need to be understood in context. So it was founded, and it did have its beginnings in the 20th century in Japan. And so we really need to remember that, but it has been developed to benefit the whole world and really to last thousands of years. And they've created an organisation that's stable and well-based and hopefully fairly immune to corruption for the most part, that could last for thousands of years. So that's been the goal of the organisation. But we need to look at it in the Japanese cultural context that it's grown out of. So things like Buddhist sutras and books of prayers are very common in Asian cultures. The Dharma books and the books of prayers are, I guess, an entry point for devotional practice for Happy Science. So anybody who comes along is welcome to become a friendship member with Happy Science and receive the basic little books of the Dharma of the Right Mind. And the Dharma of the Right Mind is full of spiritual energy, and it's made to be studied and recited regularly just to help charge your days with spiritual energy. It's not, some movements are all about chanting and repeatedly chanting in a kind of mesmerizing trance-like way. These teachings are really about studying them, but also the prayers especially are about tuning into the support of high spirits and the spirit world. So your guardian and guiding spirits, and also the high spirits who support Happy Science and the movement. So if you find that those books have a good power for you, if you find that you like the light that they bring into your life, you're welcome to become a full member. And the full members, rather than just agreeing that they want to explore right mind, actually take the refuge in the three gems, the three jewels of, it's as in traditional Buddhism, the Buddha, the Dharma and the Sangha. And taking refuge in those three is what people have been doing since the time of Buddha. And I'll cover a little bit more of this yet, but basically it means you take refuge in the Buddha, the teacher, the Dharma is the teachings, and the Sangha is the organisation. So yeah, that's just the basic pledge, and then that's to become a full member, and you receive those 3 books. I want to talk a little bit about that. So exploring the right mind is all you need to do to become a friendship member. Just say that it's kind of a commitment that you want to explore your own mind, deepen your own spiritual knowledge of yourself. And the right mind is also a connection to the right mind of God, the highest God, so the universe, and connecting your mind to that. So that's what that first step is. Then the pledge of discipline, the triple gem of Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, is a more practical connection with happy science specifically. So it's saying that you are committed to not, slander the Buddha, the Dharma and the Sangha, basically. But in this book, Master Okawa, The Rebirth of Buddha, this is one of my favourite books. This and The Laws of the Sun, I think, are the 2 that I probably recommend the most, at least to serious searchers. But in The Rebirth of Buddha, Master Okawa explains that there's 3 objects of devotion that are really important if you want to have a kind of well-rounded kind of faith, a religious faith. So one is faith in an eternal God, the eternal Buddha, the ultimate first cause of everything in creation. And that existence is so unimaginable that you can't say very much about it. It's imminently here with us. It's absolutely with us in every moment, in every place. But it's also not something that you can claim. It has no personality that we can talk to in a kind of direct way. And yet at the same time, it acts through everyone and everything around us. So we absolutely encourage a devotion, like an actual faith, to connect your mind as much as you can daily to that high spirit, to tune your mind to the sublime love and light that flows infinitely from that highest God. So that's an important part of faith. And for some religions, that's all that's allowed. But we also think that there's also high spirits who are individuals who have lived lives as physical individuals and developed through that process individual personalities, and they have personalities. And you can communicate with them, and they talk and they give guidance. So they might appear as a burning bush, or they might just be a whisper in your dreams, but they absolutely guide people here on Earth today. And they might be just inspiring a scientific discovery, or they might be helping to found a religion, but they're absolutely active. And they deserve our respect because they are absolutely of a higher dimensional existence. They have a huge amount of power, especially compared to us here on Earth, spiritual power. And if you respect them and if you listen to their guidance, it also helps to overcome your own ego, because we get so full of ourselves, we think we're, our own little gods, that giving authority to somebody else, another entity, another spirit, helps to bring guidance into your life and to overcome the ego shell that we build around ourselves. And the last object of faith that we really encourage is to the incarnated Buddha, or to the high spirit that is currently incarnated in the world. So when Jesus came, Jesus said, and I've probably said this before, but Jesus came and Jesus said, the only way to the Father is through me. And what he was saying was basically, I have complete authority on the earth. My teachings are the words of the highest heaven. And when he was alive here on earth, it was absolutely true. So he was the highest spiritual authority on the earth, and his teachings set the standard. So anybody who was hostile or ignoring him couldn't really be called a true religious seeker. So because they're not really quite being honest with themselves if they're not at least open to accepting those new teachings. So we believe that Master Okawa is an incarnated high spirit, absolutely, and we really encourage people to hear his teachings while he's still alive. It's a really powerful time. But we also absolutely believe that others will come in the future. So we don't want to set up a situation where we're close our minds to what the future holds as well. And we're also very interested in the past. So we study all kinds of things from the past. So we're not saying with this that there's only one way. We're saying that there's something happening right now here on Earth, and that the high spirits who's on the Earth now has the responsibility and the authority to talk about the will of the highest heaven. So those three points of faith you'll see in different ways through Happy Science, and coming out in different ways through Happy Science. So I'll continue on. Oh, and I should say, the name El Cantare to us means the highest God of the earth, but it also connects us to that highest eternal Buddha. And it also represents Master Okawa. So it really is those three. So when we talk about El Cantare, we really are talking about all three of those to some extent. So we see that highest spirit as being the highest authority of the earth, but also an eternal Buddha that's far beyond that as well. Okay, so Gohonzons are, I think literally it means a focus of devotion, or I'm not sure what the literal meaning is, but this is a Gohonzon. This is just a folding version. That's the second one there. The smaller one is probably about folded up. It's probably about the size of a phone. And members pay donation and purchase these and put them in their homes, and basically it becomes like a household temple in your house. So it's like having a shrine in your house. And for Japanese people, this is nothing foreign. Most Japanese households, I think it's safe to say, have some sort of shrine somewhere in their house. And if modern people don't, then their parents almost definitely did. So this is not as foreign, I think, to Japanese people as to Westerners. But it represents that it's a focal point for your devotion. So if you have one of these, and we love ours, it sits in our house and it really fills that room and really our whole house with a lot of light. And I sit in front of it and meditate every day, and we say prayers from the Dharma books, and it really gives us a place that's a little bit sacred in our lives, and it helps to create a lot of spiritual protection around your house and your home as well, which I think is really important. So this is Gohonzon. There's a lot of different versions. Some are more elaborate, some have a statue in them. So the statue is of Master Okawa, but it kind of, as I said, it's El Cantare, so it represents something higher than just a human as well. It represents that kind of high spirit, and ultimately a ultimate sort of God. So some of the spiritual practices that Happy Science members love are meditation, and we'll do a meditation after this seminar, and it's a great one. I'm quite looking forward to it. Self-reflection, regular self-reflection, just so that we can check our minds, check for impurities, check for imbalances, check if you're becoming too out of alignment with your true self and true calling. We also do a lot of study. We study the teachings, we study other teachings, we study the people around us in our daily lives. But it's pretty serious study. Read books, write essays. It's pretty serious. And again, it's a little bit Japanese, the seriousness with which Happy Science people study. is a little bit Japanese, so don't be too afraid of it. It actually, if you make the effort, you can really learn an incredible amount if you make a consistent effort to study a little bit each day. Prayers and Kigans. So the prayer book is a book that you can read sections of yourself every day, and it offers a lot of power, and some of those prayers are about specific things like healing or blessing deceased ancestors and specific things like this. But Kigans are something a little bit different. Kigan is a ritual prayer, and it's generally conducted in a temple by a minister or a staff member, a priest, and they are supported by high spirits. So when you say a Kigan, you're inviting a high spirit to help you on some specific issue. So they tend to be very focused, they tend to be about particular things, but there's very many of them. So there's ones for prosperity, and there's ones for healing different illnesses. There's ones for healing general illnesses. There's ritual prayers for safety in automobiles, which taxi drivers may like to do. There's quite a variety of them. So this is a very Japanese concept, to have to pay a donation for a prayer to be done by a priest for your benefit is absolutely natural in Japanese culture. Buddhist monks have been making a living for hundreds of years doing exactly that. So if you have a family member die, you would pay for a prayer to be said, perhaps every day for a period of time, and it does a few things. First of all, it has got a lot of spiritual energy, because people who are focused on spirituality every day, who make it their life mission, have a lot of power if they decide to say a prayer. So you can call on them to say that prayer, but also it supports that person to live if they're being paid. So charging money for prayers is actually a fair exchange, okay? But to a more cynical Western mind, we go, paying for prayers, it's very difficult for the Western mind to accept that there's anything spiritual left in that when there's been money exchanged, because we're quite we find money and spirituality, we don't know how they interrelate. So if they try and interact, we say, oh no, that's corrupt. But in actual fact, it works quite well. And the other thing that system allows is for the work of high spirits. So there's many high spirits who support the Happy Science Queensland. For example, there's a particular goddess who's Isis, goddess Isis, who's committed to supporting a particular healing prayer. And so if you do that healing prayer, she helps you to be healed. And so by making that exchange, you're kind of converting the dedication of that spiritual entity into material wealth for the organisation through the donation for the prayer. So it helps to support the organisation in a very practical way. So that commitment from that spiritual entity kind of translates into growth for the movement as well. So although it's a difficult concept for Westerners to accept, I've seen a lot of, really, I would say, miracles happen for people through the Kigans and through the process of doing Kigans. And I feel a lot myself when I do them. So I do recommend you try at least one of them someday. But as I said, we're a long way from the temples and branches here. Down in Sydney, they do Kigans every day. but here in Queensland we're a long way from that, but I'd just like to let you know about that. Okay, so when you do a kick-in, you receive like a charm for each of the different kick-ins. So you can take that home. I have one in my wallet for prosperity, and we have others sitting behind it, beside our Gohonzon at home, just to remind us of that. They're also sort of like a pledge to make that progress for yourself. Obviously that one is tapping into some of the prosperity of Hermes, which is another story entirely. It's quite a powerful thing. Okay, so I talk about temples, and here in Australia we're a long way from the heart of the empire, but in Japan there are dozens, if not hundreds, of temples already, and they're quite amazing. There's been quite a lot of dedication put into these buildings from the people who, from the members and people who are supporting the growth of the movement. A lot of artistic talent in Japan. It really impresses me every time I walk into one of these buildings. It just is incredible. They're very beautiful. But I guess the point I want to make is that there's a lot of hostility to in modern Western culture to the idea of churches making beautiful religious buildings. People say, why religious people are so hypocritical because they make a beautiful building when they could give money to somebody starving in Africa. And you can understand that there's, you know, like an appeal to sympathy for the person starving in Africa, and there's no shortage of people who would accept a handout of cash. But from the perspective of the religious person, the creating a religious building creates a space where people can go and they can study and they can refine their minds in a very focused way. So if you go to these temples, it's a serious, there's serious places for serious refinement of your soul, and they have a space. They create that space that you can't just create, you know, in a library any day of the week. You know, it needs to be a consistent vibration. So you're creating a vibration, and many of these temples, I mean, probably all of these temples, have a subtle vibration that feels perhaps as close as you can come to being in heaven while you're on the earth. So they have a beautiful spiritual vibration. And that vibration helps people to refine their minds and refine their souls. And for the religious person, that is more important than giving a meal to somebody. Because as you refine people's souls, you begin to empower them to feed themselves and to feed others and to grow in a way that starts to make hunger a thing of the past, whereas giving handouts, we really know now that, you know, things like foreign aid, just giving millions of dollars to countries, doesn't solve the problem. We need to be educating people and we need to be empowering people, and that is what we're trying to do. We're trying to work at a more at the cause rather than at the symptom. So the starving children is a symptom. The symptom of people not taking responsibility for their lives and people not being educated to be empowered to solve those problems. And having said that, Happy Science does do a lot of charity work as well. So we build schools in third world countries and help feed starving school children. So it's not that we don't do that as well, but we think this is an important mission as well. Yeah, and I really want to say, they're absolutely beautiful buildings. Like, if you ever get the chance, go and visit them, because they blow me away. It was probably 6 years or more before I first went to Japan. I'd been a member of Happy Science for about 6 years, perhaps. And I realise now I had no idea about Happy Science until I really visited Japan. You can't kind of, I'm trying to cover some of it in this lecture, but I can't replace a visit to one of the temples in Japan. They're just quite incredible, and it's quite an experience going there. Yes. But if you can't make that, the Australia Shotokan in Sydney is also a beautiful building, and it has a beautiful prayer room, and they have lots going on. So every Sunday, probably right now, they do lectures and seminars, and you can catch some of them online. They do, I want to pitch Tetsu's Eightfold Path seminar. It's a particularly strong seminar, and Tetsu's rewritten that particular seminar, and it's a more sort of advanced seminar. And I think it goes for two or 3 days, probably a weekend or something like that. Also, a lot of light, really a beautiful refuge in the middle of Sydney. You can't hear the traffic that's pounding past on the Pacific Highway outside in Lane Cove there. It's just such a refuge. So, and the people would be more than happy to help look after you and teach you anything else you want to know. So please visit Sydney, the Sydney Temple. Okay, so to our Queensland people, I want to say, what can we create in Queensland? Queensland kind of has the opportunity to create something really bright and beautiful. I think based on these new ideas and this new vision for the future. So I, spent a lot of time thinking about what we might be in the future, working together and becoming something new. So I ask you to think about it as well, and go ahead and create it. I think our potential there is pretty incredible. Here is the thing that I think Happy Science has given me that's been the most powerful for me. Because the thing that it's given me is a sense of mission, a strong sense of wanting to help the world and having a method to help the world. Because it can be quite difficult to figure out how to change the world if you don't have a vision for the future that really matches your dream. So discovering Master Okawa's teachings and his vision for the future has given me a sense of mission. And for me, that's changed me more than anything else in my life. Is that sense of wanting to make steady progress and to help others and to change the world by spreading these teachings. So the question, what does Happy Science have to offer me, is not the question that will benefit you most. The question that will benefit you most is, what can I offer? What potential is inside me that I can develop to change the world? So thank you everyone for listening to me again. So we're going to do a special meditation soon, but we'll have a few minutes break, and we'll get back to that. So.